Or people like Alyssa Ashley, and they connect with that person. So sometimes it's not as serious as like, it has to be completely different, but it's like, you know what? It's me, and what I'm adding to it is what's different.
That's it. Being able to build that brand, I guess, of you yourself. Being able to sell yourself, I guess, is very important when you're going into this avenue, in my opinion. Do you have any advice regarding that? Because I know you've been working on branding for a long time.
So you mean like going into like your own avenue, or what do you mean?
Any form of creative avenue, either film or music, or even any form of artistry really, or media.
Okay.
Being able to brand yourself to, I guess, show a full, like this is my work, this is what I create, this is what I stand for. Type of process, and do you have any advice regarding that? Because I know you've been working on branding, so I just wanted to know what your thoughts on that.
That's a good question.
Is it a good question? Would you look at that off the top of my head?
It is a really good question, because it makes me think, like, even for me, I'm like actually trying to think of an answer for it. I'm just like a very strong advocate for the individual. And I feel like, in a sense, we are our branding. And so for me, like, I'm like getting into branding myself, and then I also work with like different clients, helping them brand themselves through social media. And so a lot of the times when I work with people, I want to know their core being, like, who are you? Like, why are you doing this? Like, what do you think people connect with more? Because that's, again, it's the connection to the person. You know, like, anybody can make a shirt, anybody can make furniture, anybody can make really anything, but it's kind of like, how do you connect with the person? And adding that element, I think, is what really attracts people in. So when it comes to like branding yourself, just being true to who you are. Like, I feel like I keep saying that, but it's so important. Like, when I started trying to dip into influencing, I'm still dipping in there, but I was talking to somebody who her job was to actually like build influencers. And she was like, well, what do you want to influence? Like, that's what you have to find first, is what are you trying to do? And she said, once you identify all of the aspects that you're trying to bring to the table, then build content around that. Because then it kind of helps you to streamline your audience, rather than focusing on like, oh, I'm going to do this and do that. It's like, okay, but what is it that like gets you excited? Like, what is that thing that you could sit down and talk for hours about, or you could argue about, or whatever the case is that you can stand for? And then focusing on that, because there are going to be people who identify with that, and then building your content around that. And then your brand starts to build itself. You don't really have to sit down and try to figure out all of the like tiny details before you even have the core of it. So
it's really just being true to yourself and doing what you really want to do.
I would say so, yeah. Because I feel like that's how you prevent burnout. Because have I?
I guess you have.
I've burned out so many times. Currently burnt out. Sorry, this is like no credibility. No, but I'm also thankful for the burnout, because it kind of has taught me how to look at things differently. I've been doing photography seriously for maybe 3 years now. But I've been shooting since I was in middle school, but as far as like a business, for 3 years. And then I've worked in social media for 4 years, starting out as like intern, and then finally having a job in it. But I mean, it's been a process of figuring out what my niche is and what I like to do, because I've done a lot of stuff for people that I'm like, this isn't even what I'm excited about. But I'm like spreading myself thin, because I know it's somewhere in there. I'm like, I know it's something with social media, it's something with like helping with branding, but like I'm not completely sure, to the point now where I'm like, okay, I know exactly what I like to do, or the clients that I like to work with, and I can direct that way. But it was always that feeling of like telling people's stories and connecting with people that kind of like pushed the passion, where it's like, you know, like the core of it, I know I want to work with women and build women and bring them into circles together. So that kind of pushes me even more. So the moments where I'm just like, man, I'm tired, but it's like, okay, but what are you doing it for? And remembering what you're doing it for. And that kind of helps like drive you, but then also remembering that burnout comes from having too many things that you're doing at once. And so being able to sit down and being like, okay, this is what I'm trying to do. What is taking away from that? What is preventing the growth in that? What is something that's just dead weight? And dropping that stuff off and being like, okay, that's not needed. Unfortunately, I have to go. And then focusing back in on what the reason why you're doing anything or doing what you're doing.
That's amazing. That was really well said.
Thank
really
you.
well
I appreciate
that. I really do agree with you. I don't think I've personally been burnt out because I don't do anything.
Yeah.
Pretty,
no.
Trust me.
We're not going to do this.
We're doing this.
We're not.
No, I'm so serious. I chill. Most of my days are just chilling. But that's besides the point. What I wanted to I really think that's
5
really,
interviews in one day, music videos.
Just 2.
Okay, we're going to say 5 anyway. Music videos, photography, and works a 9 to 5.
We're talking about you, okay? We're focused on you.
Stressful. Okay.
Oh my gosh. No, but I think that's a really good advice for people who go through burnout because I see it a lot and it really kind of knocks you back a notch almost.
Yeah, I know.
It's hard. It's a hard place to get out of. But I really think it's important to find your niche, what you want to do, what you're trying to do, and I guess the best way to do that is to kind of explore different variety of things a little bit so you can figure it out.
I feel like it happens a lot with like our age group.
Definitely.
Like everybody is like trying to find out what they want to do, or I mean, it's a comparison game. You get on Instagram and you see people who are like 12 years old who already have like a company where they have employees, and it's just
Joke.
like
blows my mind.
Right? And it's crazier. You have like 15-year-olds who just bought a Ferrari, and it's like, what am I doing with my life when I can't even put gas in my tank? But it's like, it's kind of one of those things where everybody feels the pressure to make some type of like money off of something where it's like, you know, a lot of people forget about supply and demand, you know, like you're supplying all of this stuff, but nobody asks for it. There's no demand for it. And so it's kind of like working yourself crazy to create something that there's not even really like a calling for, in a sense of like, you know, like I don't mean that in a negative way, but I mean, that's just how you make a successful business. That's how you are like successful. I mean, even with like photography, I didn't start charging until there were people DMing me constantly like, hey, can I shoot with you? Can I shoot with you? And I was like, okay, well, like, I need to get compensated for this. Or even with like social media management, like there was a point where I was just volunteering. I was an intern. I was doing that to the point where like people would reach out to me and say, hey, like we really want you to work with us. Like we love what you're doing. And then it's like, okay, I should start monetizing it because there were people asking me for it, not me saying, hey, you guys just dropped a new service. Let me know when you want it. No, like, and I don't mean to come at anyone about that. Like definitely do what you have to and what you feel like you're supposed to. But I just personally feel like if you want to succeed or you want to make a profit quickly, the way to do it is to make people want it first before you just put it out there.
So kind of like going through that process, putting in that work. Because you've said that a couple of times throughout this interview. So how important is that to you, to put in the work, to put in the process, to be able to, I guess, move to that next level where people are taking not only you, but your craft seriously? Yeah,
no, it's really important. I mean, even like, I'm trying to think of like an example, but I just feel like that's where you establish your credibility.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what can you do? Because I think I get in conversations all the time with people who feel like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. But I'm like, okay, what do you have to show for it? And I think it sucks though to go through the process. Like I was an intern for a year probably with a company, wasn't getting paid, was like making content every single day, and it was like stressful. I mean, there were times where I was mad. I was like, I'm not trying to send this to y'all. Like, you're not even paying me. Like, what is this? But then I'm like thankful because it also showed me also what to demand from people, but then also like the process of creating and the hard work that you have to put in, and then also getting to a point where when I start to contract or bring people on to work with me, understanding how they function as a worker and being able to connect with that. But yeah, it's definitely putting in the work is, you know, where you start. You almost have to pay your dues. I think everybody that is successful, you can look at and they had to sacrifice something. They had to go through a point where they really learned from the ground up how things worked before it was a thing where they were getting paid to do what they do.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Having said that, do you have any advice that you want to give to anyone out there?
Anyone out there?
Anyone out there? There's like 20 people who know us.
Don't say that.
No, I'm pretty sure it's going to be more.
Yeah. Advice in terms of just anything?
Anything really, specifically really dealing with, I guess, developing yourself, I guess, in creativity.
Do you want to look at the camera?
You can look at me if you like.
Okay. My biggest piece of advice would be to just keep pushing and going. There are so many times where I've stopped myself, where I was like, oh man, I can't do this, or oh, this doesn't look right, and I just stopped moving. And it like pushed back my process as growing as a professional, but also my creative aspect. So keep going, even if it doesn't work out the way that you thought it would, even if it's not the best thing that you've created, but you did it. And that's something to celebrate, is every little victory that you have, as even if it's as simple if like you're a filmmaker and you wrote that script, like congratulations, you wrote a script. Like it may not be the full film, but you did something, and it's that little bit towards the bigger goal. And just learn from it all, you know, even the bad situations. I try to keep a journal, as kind of like, I guess, nerdy as it is. Yeah, I journal. Really? Oh my goodness. Oh. Wow. But I try to keep a journal where I kind of like catalog the things that I've learned, or if I'm really frustrated about a situation I'm dealing with a client, like what issues I'm experiencing. So then when I move to the next client, I know how to address those issues. I know how to put systems in place that kind of take that and are like, okay, that's not happening again. And it also builds me as a business person, because there are a lot of people you meet who are in business who are just like cutthroat. They're like, no, I'm not doing it with you. No. And it's just like, I'm over here like, yeah, we'll work on anything that you want. And it's like, no, like if you want to be a legitimate business, you have to, you know, work that way. But going through the process, every moment is a lesson. So my advice would be, in short, keep pushing, learn from what you're going through, and don't be too hard on yourself, even though I'm kind of hard on myself, you know, give yourself a few breaks and enjoy it. Really stick to your passion and love what you do. And if you stop loving it, then take a break and figure out if you need to redirect yourself.
Great. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. Put it there. Now we both stand up at the same time. Ooh, my knee just popped. I'm getting over.
Oh.
And you exit the stage left.
Was that good or was that bad?
Have a beautiful day. No, it was good. It was really good. You was spoken. That's how people from Virginia speak.
I miss you.
What does that mean?
I hope you miss me too.
Is that bad? Like, I mean,
Dreams of you. I hope you dream of me too. Wondering when I see you again.